Hey everyone, I'm Fox with Foxio Games, and this is Ultima 6, The False Prophet. Originally released in 1990 for MS-DOS on PC, it was later ported to the Amiga, Atari ST, Commodore 64, FM Towns, whatever that is, PC 9801, and the X68000, and, in 1993, the Super Nintendo. Yeah, most people who played this game probably did so on either the PC on MS-DOS or the SNES version. Surprisingly, I forgot to mention in my Ultima 7 The Black Gate review that the game was released on the Super Nintendo, but it was heavily modified and is barely a shadow of the original game. It's a pretty mediocre game overall and does not capture the magic of the original DOS version of Ultima 7. Well, I'm happy to say that if you absolutely can't do the MS-DOS version of Ultima 6, the SNES version isn't bad. It's a pretty faithful port of the original game, and you'll have mostly the same experience playing either version. I'm playing Ultima 6 via the fan-made NUVIE engine, that's spelled N-U-V-I-E, which is a front end for the game data much like Exalt was for Ultima 7. The interface can be modified or entirely reworked to function more like Ultima 7, but I've chosen NUVIE's Original Plus mode, which is mostly faithful to the original game while also adding some convenience for modern gamers. In addition to some interface tweaks, it also adds multiple save files that can be individually named. That's awesome. Well, let's get right down to it, guys, the review. When I review modern PC games, I start by discussing the settings and performance, but let's be honest, that's just a waste of time with these ancient DOS titles, so we'll skip most of that. The NUVIE engine allows for some customization of the experience and controlling the music and sound levels, which was important to me because the music came out way too loud initially. Play around with all the settings on the NUVIE front end and find what works best for you. Graphically, Ultima 6 The False Prophet is a big step up from Ultima 5. I mean, look at this side-by-side comparison. I am playing in a slightly modified resolution from my monitor, but the graphics are essentially unchanged from the original. I'm not using an HD texture pack or anything like that. So yeah, it's easy to see that there's been a huge leap graphically going from 5 to 6. Aesthetically, I have to say I'm a bit mixed on the look overall. So much stuff is really tiny and hard to discern, requiring a lot of use of the look command to figure out what it is. It's easy to miss important details in the game world, and sometimes things look confusing or a bit messy. Character models are as good as you could expect with nicely detailed character portraits during conversation mode. Unfortunately, most character models are reused, even plot-critical characters. Heck, even several of your own party members' models are reused. In fact, Gweno and Yolo appear to have identical character models, and both can be in your party at the same time. It's possible to be in combat and be fighting enemy characters that look identical to characters from your own party. That is definitely not cool, and all plot-critical and party member models should have been unique. At least Lord British's model isn't used more than once. The game world is pretty lush and colorful, making use of all 256 colors in the more advanced VGA mode at 320 by 200 resolution. Obviously, I've got the game stretched out here to better fit my monitor, but you can use the NUVIE engine to get a more accurate look if you so prefer. Combat and magic effects are mediocre at best and sometimes downright awful. A common casting effect is the same thing that happens when you free one of the Shrines of Virtue. The screen turns a sort of ugly pink color and a horrible screeching noise persists for a couple seconds. The visuals on most spells are either non-existent or just passable. Sometimes nothing at all happens, and not even a sound effect, just a text message that the casting worked or didn't. As for sound and music, well, let's talk about the sound effects first. They can get really tiresome. It almost sounds like they were trying to emulate the horrible bleep and bloop noises of the PC speaker. They could have done much better, especially the bleeps made during basic combat, which can go way beyond repetitive when fighting enemies like insects. Listen to this. And this is with the sound effects turned way down. I think I have them set to something like 30% of normal volume. Sounds like this weren't terribly uncommon, but they had Sound Blaster at their disposal and could have done much better with Ultima 6. And the music? Oh gosh, the music. There are a couple of good tracks, like the infamous Stones song, but other than that, there are just a handful of songs and they get ear-gratingly annoying very early on. The battle music is decent, Stones is great, and there's one other okay song, but the rest are overbearingly annoying. The songs go on and loop rather quickly, so you might want to just turn them off, to be honest, or play your own selection of songs. Unfortunately, the music mostly plays irrespective of the context. The well-known Hail Britannia song can play while exploring the wilderness, and Stones can play while wandering Lord British's castle. It makes no sense. They definitely improved on this a lot in Ultima 7. The story in Ultima 6 seems pretty basic at first and gets more intriguing as time goes on. You start out by freeing the 8 Shrines of Virtue from the Gargoyles, which appear to be an evil race of demon-like creatures. You then pursue the other half of a tablet to translate the Gargoyle script, and this takes you on a pirate treasure hunt. Eventually you'll start interacting with the Gargoyles, and in the end, you'll find that the Gargoyles aren't what they seemed at first. I won't spoil everything, but expect a nice twist ending, one that was rarely ever seen in RPGs of this era. It's not just the typical evil appears, destroy the evil storyline. But how's the gameplay? It's actually not bad. I can tell you that the combat is a heck of a lot better than its successors. That includes both parts of Ultima 7 as well as Ultima 8 and 9. In Ultima 6, hostile encounters engage turn-based mode, and enemies and friendlies have turns based on their dexterity. You can put your party into combat mode, telling everyone to follow whatever combat strategy you've assigned to them. You control the avatar directly, or can go into solo mode and control other characters as well. Solo mode for all party members is also available outside of combat. Back to solo mode, this is actually really useful. You can control any single character from your party, and it's best to do this either if you want one person to scout ahead, or if you need to cross over an area of traps to grab something in return. You can also separate your party and go into solo mode to open potentially booby-trapped chests, ensuring that only the solo character is at risk of the trap. To return to party mode, you must have the rest of your party nearby. They will not come to meet you from just any distance. The game uses 2 mechanisms to restrict your view. One is a very basic and imprecise algorithm to blacken out areas that you aren't supposed to be able to see, such as the inside of a building with the door closed. Opening the door opens up view of the room, even if you're standing off to the side and wouldn't technically be able to see in. You can also see in through windows, but it's also not accurate, and I'm okay with that, actually. In some cases, you'll see inside other areas not actually connected to the window, or the movement of an NPC somewhere on the screen will become visible and light up an area that should otherwise be dark at night due to light sources not near you. Not sure if this is all the original game, or some of this is the new game engine. The other mechanism is nighttime or dark areas like caves. The outer areas of the game world will be darkened increasingly as it gets later and later in the day until the sun is gone, or darkened to match the cave environment. You can either cast a light spell or have a party member hold a torch, but if you move away from the torch-wielding party member, the screen starts going dark again, so interesting touch. There are various modes of travel in the game. You can run around on foot, obviously, but you also have horses, boats, and ships at your disposal. The easiest way to get around is to learn how to use your Orb of the Moons, which allows you to teleport using the moon gates. You basically position the cursor on a set tile from the avatar's position, and based on where you set it, it will teleport you to a different town or shrine. This is hands down the most useful way to get around, and I recommend mastering its use early on. You could experiment to find out where it sends you, or you could just do what everyone's going to do anyway and look it up online. I forgot to mention the game's interface. The game world is on the left portion of the screen, with the menus and text box on the right. This is a pretty standard view, with modifications from the original using the new game engine. Your character stays centered in the viewable game world, and you can interact with your inventory and status screens as well as character dialogue on the right. You type most commands, although thanks to Nuvi there are additional mouse commands available as well. G stands for get and allows you to pick up items. M is for move and lets you move objects, and yes, even people. That's right, if an NPC gets in your way and blocks you, you can just forcefully pick them up and move them, and they never seem to have a problem with it either. You can interact with doors, containers, and other objects using the use command, so that might confuse a few of you who have been around for a while and are expecting O to be the command for open on doors. There's something both archaic and comforting about typing out text commands. It takes me back to the much older days when, as a kid, I'd play games that were still around, but technically even before my time. I remember playing text-only MUDs online, and do an online search for MUD game to learn more about that. There are still online MUDs active today, in fact, if you were ever interested in trying one out. NPCs in the game have schedules. They aren't necessarily as detailed as those of Ultima 7, but NPCs will sometimes be at home, at the pub, at their store, or elsewhere. If you want to pass the time waiting for a storekeeper to return, you can just hold the spacebar down. This is also how to pass the nighttime hours if you don't want to wander around in the dark or waste a torch to light it up. I often just skipped through nighttime. I mean, why waste torches or travel around with handicapped vision? Interacting with shopkeepers is not so convenient. They will give you the option to buy multiples of some things, but not everything. To sell items, I have to go through a series of dialogue options for each and every item I sell, even if it's a whole bunch of the same thing. It's a long, tedious process, but you start to get the hang of it and begin moving faster and faster through the dialogue. Shops are extremely limited in what they buy or sell, and some only sell one thing and won't buy anything. Many towns are missing some shops entirely, and some shops are missing one of the primary or even only reasons you'd bother to visit them. Like the Provisioner in Britain doesn't even sell any lockpicks, despite having one on display on the counter in his shop. The game is open world, allowing you to go almost anywhere right from the start. You can use the Orb of the Moons from Lord British's throne room and travel to nearly any main point on the map, and all within just a couple minutes of character creation. Speaking of character creation, you choose a name, sex, and portrait, some of which are quite attractive, I must say. I mean, look at this young lady. You go through a common but ambiguous character creation segment for the series, at least up until Ultima 7 when they dropped it. In Ultima 6 and several previous Ultimas, you start out by talking to a gypsy who will ask you questions that have no right or wrong answers. You're basically just given ultimatums, choosing A or B between two different virtues. It highlights that no one can exhibit all of the virtues simultaneously. Do you honestly call out a dishonest gambler, or do you humbly let him cheat you out of money, knowing he needs the money for his starving family? Do you valiantly strike down an attacker who has fallen to the ground, or do you show him compassion and let him live? Most players will be inclined to answer based on their own personal morality, but each answer will determine the starting stats of your character. It would be wise to never, ever choose the humility answer, because humility grants you a grand total of 0 stat bonus points. All of the other answers will grant you some stats, but this is never explained in the game. I looked up the virtues online to see what stats I get, then chose those answers based on the stats, regardless of the flavor text of the ultimatums. And speaking of ultimatums, did you know that the Ultima series was originally called Ultimatum, but it was later shortened for copyright or trademark purposes? Yeah. Back to the open world aspect, it is a bit deceptive. You cannot traverse the massive land as easily as you could in Ultima 7. There are a lot of obstructions that just plain block you, forcing you onto more narrowed and limited paths. It seems as if most of the game basically funnels your party onto the intended set paths, although thankfully the paths do branch off at various points. Most of the caves are exceptionally narrow, even down to a single tile in width at various points. The world overall starts to feel smaller and smaller the more you play it. The entire island of Buccaneer's Den can be traversed in mere seconds, and has only a handful of inhabitants. But I know, it's easy to argue that a game could have had more of something. I mean, every game can always have more of just about everything. I'm saying it feels exceptionally limited in this case. Ultima 7 did a good job making most places feel fairly large and realistic, including the inclusion of lots of small houses spread out over a large space to help with that, as did having NPCs who had little or really no significant interaction. Kind of like Skyrim putting random NPCs in the towns to give the appearance of a population. Unfortunately, your own party members get in the way a lot. They don't obstruct your movement because you can walk through them, but they do block you from interacting with anything underneath them. If you want to open a chest, but Dupree is standing on top of it, well, I'm not aware of any way to do this without repositioning your party to get Dupree off of it. Yes, you can move your party members with the move command, but still. You can also go into solo mode, but you'll be encountering this issue a lot. Party members blocking your access to switches, chests, corpses, and more. There are 3 segments of built-in copy protection during the story. Lord British will ask you some questions right away when you start a new game, and then 2 more key characters will throw questions your way that you have to answer. You can look the answers up online, obviously, but it's interesting that they implemented these spread throughout the game rather than all at the start. In keeping with Ultima tradition, Ultima 6 has some weird stuff in it. The character Penumbra, who starred in other games, cannot be reached without dispelling or traversing a range of magic fields inside her home. She has multiple box crates with dead bodies in them and a bloody altar in her bedroom. Not sure what's going on there, but I figured it's best to get out as soon as possible. There's a beggar in town who pretends to be Lord British in disguise and will mislead you into believing that he has all of the runes that you need. He doesn't have any of them. There's also a musician who hallucinates that spiders are coming out of her instrument, and the list goes on. There are lots of books and notes to read for additional flavor text and lore tidbits. These moments, characters, and game areas take what would be the normal expected CRPG experience to a new level. It's like adding a couple exotic spices that you don't normally taste, and it just adds that much more to the culinary experience. But in this case, a video game. If I could make some recommendations to improve the game, I would say that it needs a few things to make the experience a lot more convenient. First, an in-game map would go a long way to help you orient yourself as you travel. Secondly, it'd be nice to have a more intuitive interface for dealing with shops in the game. And thirdly, you should be able to make use of beds for resting. At least the bed that was designated to you by Lord British in the castle, because you literally cannot sleep in any bed anywhere. Technically you can use the inns, but you buy them and that's it. And thirdly, you should be able to make use of the beds in the game for resting. At least the bed that was designated to you by Lord British. He even tells you that you have the bed, but unfortunately, it's impossible to rest in any bed in the game. You can actually pay the innkeep to sleep there, but you don't actually get in the bed. You just stand there in front of him and then time passes. So it's really awkward that none of the beds in the game are usable. What, son? Are you talking to the audience, buddy? No, don't. Ah! No, you can't mess with Daddy's pop filter. It's in position. It's supposed to stay in that specific position. Whoa! Oh, uh-oh. Uh-oh. You moved Daddy's pop filter. Uh-oh. Okay, hang on. Daddy's got to finish this review. We're almost done. Alright, let's get to the final verdict, okay, buddy? I'd always struggled to get into Ultima 6, and thanks to the modifications made by the NVIDIA game engine, I was finally able to get a good grip on the game. I had to push through a lot of confusing moments and do a lot of Googling to figure out where some stuff was and what to do with it, but ultimately I think it was all worth it. Ultima 6 The False Prophet... Shh, buddy. Ultima 6 The False Prophet is a great entry in the series, and... Ultima 6 The False Prophet is a great entry in the series and a game that can still be worth playing today, for those fans of CRPGs who don't mind taking a trip back in time. This game doesn't hold your hand and does expect you to figure it out on your own, but thanks to the internet, you should have many answers available without too much frustration. I can't recommend it for everybody, but it's definitely worth looking at if you think you might like a journey through a classic title. But before I leave you, let me help you get started on the right foot, if you so choose to jump into the fun but daunting world of Ultima 6. You want to play Ultima 6?
Yes.
No, don't mess with the... Leave the pop filter. Why do you need to move the pop filter? You take Mommy's cell phone? You did take Mommy's cell phone. Why do you have Mommy's cell phone? Does she know you took it? Here are my recommendations for people playing the game today. First, play the MS-DOS version using the NVIDIA engine and experiment with the different interface modes to find what works best for you. I recommend Original Plus. Next, learn the main keys to be using in the game. B enters combat mode, A for the avatar to attack, M allows you to move objects, G is for get, to take items, L is for look, to both look at items and search bodies, T is for talking to NPCs, and spacebar simply passes time. Useful if it's at night and it's dark. The arrow keys move your party, or you hold the left mouse button depending on your settings in the NVIDIA game engine. There are also other useful commands, as my son grabs the pop filter again. There are also other useful commands, like the number keys for solo mode entry. Somebody's getting fussy. Are you getting fussy? Are you getting fussy? There are also other useful commands like the number keys for solo mode entry, 0 for party mode, and F keys for quickly viewing inventories. When you encounter enemies, hit B as soon as possible to enter combat if you want to kill them, or just run away without entering combat mode. I should mention that the original game has a set of icons at the bottom of the left portion of the screen corresponding with attack, talk, move, get, etc. Shh. All the main commands are here, but it's just so much faster to use the keyboard commands instead. As part of the NVIDIA game engine, I had the icons removed and opened up more that... What are you even saying? As part of the NVIDIA game engine, I had the icons removed and opened up more of the interface for the game world. First thing after killing the gargoyles at the very start of the game in Lord British's throne room, I recommend that you go around the castle and gather up all the valuables, particularly those in the room that he's set aside to you. The room can be located directly to your southwest and should not be difficult to find. You'll find a spell book here, which is important. Loot all the chests, drawers, and take all the potions that you want. Ignore the green ones though, they just poison you, so they really don't help at all. Nothing here counts as theft, but it does elsewhere in Britain and in other towns, so be careful. Sell anything you don't need and can sell, although selling isn't always as easy as most shopkeepers won't buy most items. You level up by talking to a shrine. Yes, you talk to it, but the shrine must have been freed from the gargoyles first to do so. If you have enough experience and chant the mantra, you'll gain a level and the associated stats with that virtue. Basically, you should only be leveling up at the following shrines: Honesty, Compassion, Valor, and Spirituality, depending on what stats you want. These give you 3 stats each. All others give you 2, except for the Humility Shrine, which gives you nothing. I recommend you initially use the Valor Shrine to level up, since it gives you +3 strength, and this allows you to do more melee damage, carry more weight, and have more health. Super important. All of your party members should initially level this way in my opinion, as it's the most beneficial stat early on. There's really no in-game benefit to expressing different virtues other than stats, so there's never any reason to choose Humility, either in character creation or in leveling, unless you just want to roleplay. You can teleport to all the shrines using your Orb of the Moons. Just do an online search on how to use the orb for teleportation. Before you can level up, you need experience points, and the easiest way to get both experience points and gold early on in the game, as well as other usable loot, is to grind the enemies in the sewers beneath the castle. Specifically, the first level of the sewers using the ladder down from Nystul's potion room. It's the room with all the potions on the cabinets right there. Go south, then west, then north to the next ladder down, and you should be in the sewers now. Follow any combination of the cave turns heading in a general southeastern direction, and you should eventually arrive in the center area, which will have trolls, headlesses, and cyclops. Always save before battle, duke it out with these enemies, and then take all the goods. They aren't too tough, but don't die. Dying has an experience penalty. Just reload a save if it goes bad. Some items are easy to sell off in town, and others are harder or even impossible to sell nearby. Take the spears, cloth armor, plate helmets, gold, swords, etc. You'll quickly learn which items can be sold at the blacksmith in Britain and which items you can use right away on your party. All the rest of the stuff you can just leave there or dump it. Just a couple rounds of sewer grinding combined with selling off loot should net you over 1,000 gold easily. You can either teleport to Trinsic and start to buy the magic armor and magic helmets from the blacksmith right away, or you can wait until you have enough gold to buy it for all of your party members. If you're having trouble with combat, go get armor as soon as you're able to afford it and start equipping from the avatar and work your way down your party. I also recommend you seek out halberds if you can find them, since they have the highest damage and you can hit enemies from 2 squares away. Use the look command on armor or weapons to see their armor and damage values so you know what's best. Once all your party members are equipped with magic chest pieces and helms, as well as some good weapons, I recommend you start out by freeing all of the shrines one by one. I recommend you start by freeing the Valor Shrine and leveling up there as soon as possible, because that will give you the +3 strength. Then from there you can do Compassion, Spirituality, and so on. You can make Humility last if you want to, since it's a worthless shrine for leveling. That's why I recommended those first, by the way. They give the best bonuses. You can free the other shrines in any order, doesn't matter. There's basically walkthroughs online that you can follow. While you are intended to follow a lot of plot points to find the runes and mantras, you can actually skip most of them. The runes can often be obtained by just skipping entire quest lines and going straight to where they are, and the mantras are the same that they were in Ultima 5, or you can look them up online. You just have to type them in. So it's up to you how much of the game world you want to experience. As always, save often and make use of the newbie's multiple save files to name them something meaningful. Save before battles, before going into caves or dungeons, and before attempting to steal anything. Don't forget that you can get full healing for free from Lord British. Just talk to him and type heal, healing, or healer. Once you get the pickpocket skill, try stealing items from various characters, including Lord British himself. There's some useful stuff to be found on many important characters. Always save before you do that, of course. And you can use lockpicks to open locked doors, or you can use powder kegs to blow them open. Attacking barrels can destroy them and remove them as obstructions as well, as in a few places in the game they may block your progress. Well guys, that's everything for now that I wanted to tell you about Ultima 6, and that is my review of Ultima 6, The False Prophet. I did enjoy my time with it, although I gotta say that it's not going to be for everyone. Are you thinking of trying it, or have you already tried it and have some thoughts on it? Let me know in the comment section below. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Minds, Gab, all that good stuff, Twitch, whatever. It's all down there in the description. You'll see it down there. Click them all, follow them all if you have accounts on there. I'm Fox with Foxio Games, and I will see you guys next time.